So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Moss, the founder and CEO of Parker Dewey. I really appreciate you joining us for this webinar. I'm joined by my colleague, Kristen Schrader, who leads the university engagement team here at Parker Dewey. And we wanted to spend some time today really sharing some insights that we got from students about what is going to be a pretty crazy recruiting season this fall. So we've seen a ton of surveys over the past several months done by vendors and others, really trying to assess what recruiters and universities want when it comes to fall recruiting. But one of the things that we thought was missing was the student's voice. So we went directly to our network of hundreds of thousands of college students to ask them what they want when it comes to this fall's recruiting season. What are their top concerns? What did they get out of the past, and what are they looking for as they think about launching their career? So we conducted this survey a couple of weeks ago, and we're, again, excited to walk through the results. Just from a housekeeping perspective, we did leave time for questions at the end. So to the extent you have questions, feedback, insights, whatever, please feel free to use your Q&A feature at the bottom of Zoom, and we'll try to get to them along the way. So with that, let's kick this off. So our question was, how do the students want to connect with employers this fall? What we're going to do is first walk through the results of the survey that I alluded to before. Then we're going to try to talk about why this matters, why it matters for companies and recruiters, and why it matters for universities. And as I said, at the end of this, we'll have some time for Q&A. So first of all, we asked this question a couple of weeks ago. In under a week, we had 3,000, or actually well over 3,000 responses from students nationwide. Without going through all of the details, the students represent a really, really good cross-section of universities and of backgrounds. You can see it's a mix of students who attend large state research institutions, liberal arts programs, undergrads and master's students, along with students who are pursuing associate's degrees and other specialized degrees. So again, it's really a pretty comprehensive analysis and feedback from the students. So first of all, the first question we asked was, were your summer plans disrupted due to COVID? And almost 70% of students shared that their summer plans were in fact disrupted. Now, what was interesting about this was for some of the students who talked about it being disrupted, it was either their internships were canceled or they weren't able to finish up their campus recruiting, so weren't able to land an internship or a summer job. We also saw some students who talked about the fact that their internship program was remote or shortened. What was most interesting to me when we were analyzing it with regard to the employer feedback was that 69% wasn't even higher. Given that every company or just about every organization had some kind of a change in their summer internship program, 31% of students still reported no disruption. And the reason that's so important, I think it says a ton about the companies who adjusted their programs, the companies who responded, the companies who provided virtual experience for their summer interns. The students saw a ton of value from those. They saw a ton of value, even though they couldn't be on site, even though they couldn't be participating in all of the teamwork and team building activities that are usually part of a summer internship program. It says that they still view the experience as incredibly positive. It shows that the students are flexible and are looking for more ways to work. What it also does is it highlights that there were a large number of underclassmen, freshmen and sophomores, who weren't planning on summer internships, but were still planning to explore. So again, that's something that's really, really important, I think, as we go through it, which gets to the second point, that even though the students had the experiences, they wanted more depth. They wanted more insights. And Kristen, for those of you who haven't met her yet, Kristen, as I said, leads the university engagement team. And before joining Parker Dewey, she had a pretty incredible career working with both universities, so spearheading efforts at University of Maryland, and then also on the recruiter side. So Kristen, having spent so many years working with the students and working with the companies, why do you think the students want more depth? Why are they answering the question around what they need during the next 6 months in this way?
Well, I think every student is looking for a way that they can utilize what they're doing in the classroom to stand out. And that's what makes this past experience so challenging, is that yes, we had 70% or whatever of students who had to shift gears. And in many cases, that meant that they had to deal with some program that was canceled. And they now have this gap. And even if they were an underclassman, maybe they were looking at getting some sort of professional development experience, part-time job or something. And maybe that plan just didn't turn out quite as they were hoping. And so students are hungry for, I like to call it resumeable experience that they can then showcase to another employer for that internship, full-time job, etc. And so, I think also, students, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. I know how many of us know what we want to do when we're at that age? And even if they're non-traditional and approaching their college degree a little bit later in life. Again, I just actually teach still for University of Maryland, mostly non-traditional students. And even those adult learners still are trying to figure it out. I mean, we all are probably at that stage. So everybody needs that extra data point to make sure that, yep, this is really what I'm passionate about. And this is a company that I think I could be successful and add value in. And so those experiential opportunities just really allow for that for students. And this is an unfortunate downside, as everybody on this call can attest to, of our current situation. And students are really telling us that they're feeling it.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because obviously for the students in those 69% who had their internships canceled or shortened or whatnot, not really surprising to see numbers like you do in the upper right, that they want more opportunities to learn and explore. But what was interesting to me from reading some of the comments themselves on the survey in the free text was even those students who had 10 weeks and where the companies did everything, quote unquote, perfectly for them, part of what they felt was missing was this opportunity for the ad hoc engagement, the opportunity for the marketing summer intern to bump into someone at the elevator from sales or strategy or finance and get pulled into a meeting, where it was less about the marketing role per se and more about just this knowledge of the company and knowledge of where the role fits within the larger organization. It really goes back to, again, career exploration. And what was interesting, and again, back to something Kristen alluded to a minute ago, was that 80% of the students rated opportunities to explore career hands-on by working on projects as the number one activity most important to their career preparation. And again, for those who had the programs canceled, as Kristen alluded to, this is vital. This is how they were building their resume. But why it also matters is it ties back to the companies and the lack of understanding that students may have about the number of opportunities available at those companies. In fact, I was talking with a large CPG company this morning, a brand that we've all heard of. And they said for students who are thinking about roles in brand management, they're of course thinking about this organization. But for the student who's thinking about a role in strategy or data analytics or finance, the company's not even on their radar, and they should be. And again, this ties back to students really hungry for these opportunities for career exploration. And Kristen, again, back to your time at University of Maryland, how were you encouraging it? How were you seeing this get done by students sort of pre-COVID?
Well, I think this, again, the students that I was working at, I was at Maryland's global campus. And so a lot of adult learners who are already working, a lot of them were military, had been in lots of different types of jobs, but still hadn't found that right fit. And that's why they were going back to school to pursue their education. And so being able to take on roles in different types of organizations, being able to get their feet wet, to be able to apply what they're learning in their classes, those for internships, that's really the key, so that they can really identify what it is that they're passionate about and good at. And, that just is what makes this year extra challenging. How do they gain these experiences when there's been a lot of time that's been lost this past summer?
Well, and that's a great segue. I mean, one of the other big insights that came out of this survey was students are incredibly unsure about career fit and how how things they're learning in the classroom translate to roles that they're qualified for. And that was really, really jumping out at me. Kristen, do you think this year is different than the past with regard to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're a student that's pursuing something, say in the liberal arts, and you're studying history, English, philosophy, whatever, you're not going to find a job title for a philosopher, for English person, or whatever. Like there's some natural jobs that we all think of for those types of programs, in teaching and so on. But if you have a student who doesn't want to go in that direction, what are they going to do, and how are they going to find that right fit? And as we all know, there's wonderful careers that liberal arts students, and great assets that these students can and do, and careers that they can and do pursue from those degrees. But what is going to be the best fit for them, and how does somebody who's taking these classes and now maybe taking these classes online and not having that opportunity to engage quite in the same way with their faculty members, with their peers, and then with employers and so on, how do they figure out that this is what they're really interested in and excited about? And then perhaps even more importantly, yeah, they do a great job in these courses. They get a 4.0 GPA or whatever. Then how do they stand out? Because there's just not as many opportunities. Throw in the fact that this fall is going to present so many added challenges from an extracurricular activity standpoint. They're not going to have the student organizations per se, and so on, those leadership roles to again differentiate themselves. So it just makes it extra challenging for students to really figure out and stand out and so on. And then I think, Jeffrey, you also hit the nail on the head with those companies that they have their stereotypes. If you're an accounting major, everybody thinks of the big four accounting firms. Sure. If you are, I was an HR and a marketing major, so yeah, I thought about those consumer packaged goods companies and the brand management roles and so on. Those are some natural fits. When I graduated from college, I found a great opportunity to learn HR in a manufacturing facility, because HR was the direction I wanted to go. And when I was sitting in my beautiful, pristine undergraduate classroom, I never envisioned myself ending up in wearing steel-toed shoes, a hairnet, and being around loud machinery all the time. But that was the best place for me to learn. And I quickly found that out through an internship experience. So what's a student going to do now that they don't have that? And again, it just really makes that difficult.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because again, when I was looking at these answers, one of the things I was actually really surprised to see is such a small percentage of students, talked about, well, how do I have my resume stand out? Or I'm still unsure the best way to engage. Like, they weren't asking those questions. It wasn't, how do I apply for a job? It was more the general awareness. I don't know what roles are available. I don't know what it's like working with one company versus another. There's certain brands I may have heard of, or certain companies that may always come to campus that I feel like I should apply for, but that's it. What they're telling us is they want more opportunities for exploration, and that while historically, as imperfect as some of these things may have been, whether it's career fairs or info sessions or other on-campus events, they were at least providing some opportunity for exploration, some opportunity for students to learn about different roles and different opportunities, some opportunity for employers to engage the students and introduce their brand to their company. And one of the biggest concerns the students have is that's not going to happen. And why that matters for companies, by the way, is with 55% attrition of new hires for all students coming out of college, 55% leave in the first year. Less opportunity to explore means those numbers likely are going to skyrocket. And that's with students that you're bringing in. Think about all of the students that are getting filtered out, either by an applicant tracking system, or more importantly, getting filtered out because they're never applying. They don't understand the opportunities, which gets to, again, what do the students want? How do they want to connect with the employers this fall? And again, this was incredibly interesting to me, that 51% of the students, just over half of the students, are going to be participating in career fairs, and they want to engage with employers in those ways. Half the students are not. Half the students are not going to be showing up to career fairs. Over half the students are saying, yeah, I'm going to show up, but it's only because I feel like I need the quote unquote FaceTime with the employer. They're not seeing value from the info sessions. They're not seeing value from the company websites. We're seeing words like brochures. We're seeing words like, yeah, it's a marketing person saying all the right things about the company, but not really giving me the opportunity to learn. These things aren't happening. The students don't want to be engaged that way. They're incredibly cynical this year in particular, especially when you think about some of the social unrest. Everyone's career services page, I'm sorry, the employer page that companies have, the apply for a job, talks about the company culture, talks about the teamwork, talks about the response to COVID, talks about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But at the end of the day, the students are saying, yeah, they all look the same. The other thing we're hearing a lot from organizations is they're going to be hosting events. They're going to be hosting, again, info sessions, professional development. They're engaging with clubs. They're engaging students through emails and targeted campaigns. One of the things that's coming up from the students, and it didn't even make the bottom of the list, is email campaigns and other campaigns. The students don't want it. They're filtering those things out. They're not paying attention because every company's playbook feels the same to them. I'm getting a ton of emails. They're telling me to show up to their info session. If I want to apply for that company, I'm going to. If I hadn't heard of it or it wasn't already on my short list, I'm not. And Kristen, is that what you saw sort of pre-COVID from your work with the students, or is this something new?
Well, I think I mean, everything is different now, right? And I think one thing that really stood out to me is the student experience. Students want that individualized experience. You know, they pay a premium to go to school, and so they can interface with their faculty members, with their peers, with advisors, and and so on. So they can customize a degree program, and all of that. And now, we're all having this conversation behind a computer. And that's largely how students are going to experience their education this fall, and out of everybody's control, but it is what it is. And so looking now in this context, how can a company stand out to a student when it's just, again, sitting in front of a computer and a student sitting behind a computer, just reading and taking in additional information? And that's how they're doing their classes. It's how they're engaging with everything. It's less than optimal, and it's not that individualized experience. And back in Maryland, most of our students were taking classes online. And so we actually held both in-person and virtual career fairs anyway, and this was pre-COVID. And we get hundreds and hundreds of students to attend both of their events. But from a user experience standpoint, it's really difficult to do a virtual career fair. And it's just they're still waiting in line. They're still behind a computer. And I think students are really drained from that. And they're tired of it. And so being able to provide some sort of individualized opportunity where they can connect one-on-one and, an experiential experience like this, they're probably still going to be behind a computer, but it's still asking the student to showcase his or her creativity and to be able to think independently and put together some sort of deliverable that they then can give back to that employer to show what they can do. And that's what's lost with the traditional career service, connecting with companies, strategies that exist right now.
Yeah, and again, you're hitting something that's important. We've talked about the silver lining of this before. I think from surveys that have been done of the university recruiting teams or talent acquisition teams at companies, very, very few are satisfied with the current efforts, the current campus recruiting efforts. Very few of them would say, oh yeah, career fairs, infos, those are incredible, they're perfect, we're just continuing. I think everyone has recognized some of the challenges with those things in a traditional environment. To Kristen's point, those challenges have been amplified. What's great is that the students have told us how they want to be engaged, and the current environment actually provides a pretty good way to do it. Again, they're telling us the answer. They're telling us, stop sending us emails, stop sending us swag, stop inviting us to your info session or showing us corporate brochures. We want real experiences with your organization. To the earlier slide, we want experiences to learn about different roles. We want experiences to demonstrate skills. We want experiences to explore and decide which companies we should pursue. That's what they're looking for. And again, fortunately, companies over the past summer have demonstrated a lot of the best practices that it requires. The other thing I would say is that, look, the real work experience, this experiential recruiting that Kristen talked about, this isn't new. This is stuff that's been done already. So we're talking about hands-on experiences between prospective candidates and hiring managers. Sounds a lot like a summer internship. Sounds a lot like an apprenticeship. What's great is through those types of things that were taking place already is that you're getting that core skills assessment. You're getting the opportunity over a summer internship, for instance, to see how the students perform, to see their skills, not just the hard skills, like can that student use Excel? How are his or her skills doing data analytics, but also those core skills, the communication, problem solving, grit, interpersonal. Those are the things that really get teased out of a summer internship and other forms of experiential recruiting. What's also important is it's a mutual audition. So while you're assessing the skills of the individual, you're also introducing that individual student to your company. Again, back to the earlier survey results, 80% plus of the students want more opportunities to learn about companies. They want more hands-on experience to explore. They want to explore big companies versus small. They want to explore different roles, marketing versus sales versus finance, or industries they hadn't thought about before. They are hungry for those opportunities, and you can provide them, again, through these mutual auditions, where not only are you helping the students, but you're building this pipeline of candidates. The other thing that's really, really important is experiential recruiting provides equitable access. So with the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the continued focus on that, what we're finding is that experiential recruiting really supports those initiatives, because no longer are companies relying just on GPA or academic pedigree. They're not limiting the experiential recruiting opportunities or engagement opportunities just to students from certain schools or certain backgrounds, but they're also introducing students from different schools or backgrounds to their brand. Students who may not have heard of a company, students who may not have the social capital to get in the door, or to even think about going to an info session. What we're finding is that experiential recruiting levels the playing field, because all students have the opportunity to demonstrate their skills based on real projects, not based upon how strong of a test taker they are, or who their parents are, or how effectively they can network at a happy hour. So again, this experiential recruiting is so, so, so important. And as we talked about, this is something that's already been proven. This is something in a pre-COVID environment, organizations have proven with summer internships and apprenticeships and co-ops, which at the end of the day are experiential recruiting. But this summer in particular, we're talking with a ton of financial services organizations that have historically been averse, and that's probably a nice way to put it, to remote work. Those organizations this summer discovered that college students can do these remote work in an effective way and provide that support for the hiring manager, and also saw the value that the hiring managers were getting, in addition to engaging students from different backgrounds. And again, Kristen, when you think about the students of this year and the class of 2021 and 2022, like, how does this fit in?
I think what is tricky, and focusing mostly on traditional age college students, they, at the best case scenario, have 4, maybe 5 years to pursue their undergraduate years. And again, I know there's lots of exceptions to that, but if you think of those, that typical time frame, that means 3 summers, give or take. And now they've lost 1. And really, there's not that many students who are able to obtain that summer internship right after their freshman year. So really, it's looking more like 2, now down to 1 summer for that class of 2021 that may have missed out on that summer between their junior and senior year. So it's kind of like you have as a recruiter 2 years worth of students to look at. And so it's going to be extra challenging to really identify who's going to be the right fit. And then thinking from the student's perspective, they've missed out on that opportunity to showcase themselves during that summer to prove what they can do to hopefully land a job, but if not, to land some great experience to then segue into that full-time opportunity after graduation. And so they've got this big gap. And now also there you add in the opportunity cost element. So the class of 2022, now that they've lost a summer, maybe they were planning on using this previous summer that's just ending to study abroad or to do some other type of experience other than interning. And so if they still want to do that, now they have fewer opportunities to do so. So again, just the stakes are higher, and how can they have that full experience to really be ready to graduate and have that career that they're looking for?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And again, for all we're facing as companies, as we think about the risk and uncertainty of this fall's recruiting season, this spring's recruiting season, the students are again feeling it at an amplified level. And it's interesting times. But again, they've told us the solution. And as Kristen said, I mean, these are things that organizations have been doing anyway. Experiential recruiting is nothing new. It's been happening. It's been happening whether it's a job shadow, having someone come in and follow you around for the company. Again, low value for the student, low investment, but we're also seeing it with apprenticeships. Apprenticeships can be great for very specific roles because they're, again, long-term experiential recruiting, but they're high stakes, which means they're very, very high investment for companies. And also, again, they're great if a student already knows what pathway he or she wants to take. In the same way, the traditional summer internship is great as a deep dive into a specific role, into a specific company, but there's so few of those opportunities for exploration, which is why, again, we're obviously big fans of the micro internship. We believe that it fits very, very well into this experiential recruiting approach that students want this year. And it adds value for the students, but does so in a way that it's also supporting the companies and supporting the recruiting goals.
So the big question that I would hear a lot, because I interface with schools across the country, all types of schools, and large part of the conversation that I have with schools is around, okay, yes, students are looking for these opportunities. There's no big surprise there. So why wouldn't companies do this? Jeffrey, what are you hearing around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of times there's misconceptions. Things like, oh yeah, we have an internship program, we're good. Well, again, part of what we're trying to help companies understand and seeing is that internship programs are good if the students are already interested in you, and they're good as deep dives. One of the micro interns described it really well, where they talked about the summer internship program being like an engagement. It's a great deep dive to really understand if there's a fit. They talked about the full-time role, continuing the metaphor, being marriage. But they said what's missing is this opportunity to date, this opportunity to get to know one another in a lower stakes environment. And I pushed back. I said, well, again, this is pre-COVID. What about info sessions? What about job shadows? What about career fair? That's not dating. That's not exploration. That's Tinder. That's swiping right or left. That's looking at something that has been incredibly screened and presented by marketing to provide a certain look and feel, but it's not really giving me insights. It's not giving me insights. If I'm being asked to commit my 1 or 2 summer internships to a specific role, I'm gonna have some preconceived notions of what I want to do. I'm not going to be willing to explore. I'm not going to be willing to try out something outside my comfort zone or learn about a different industry. And that's really where we see these micro internships fitting in, is very much as that top of funnel. That way for companies to engage students who might not already be thinking about applying, or engage students at schools outside of the focus schools, or engage students at their focus schools who they may be missing because they don't have the right GPA or the right major, but have all of those core skills they're looking for. Or again, the students that weren't even considering it. So one of, again, the big misconceptions we hear is we have our internship program, we're good. And this is viewed very much as a pathway. The second question we get a lot is, well, my hiring managers aren't going to use it. We don't have these projects. We don't have these needs. And what I would say, and again, I had a conversation yesterday with an organization that talked about going through some organizational changes. And they just had a pretty massive layoff, and they're going through some other restructurings. And they said, we have too much on our plate. We're too busy to deal with this right now. We can't add anything else to our campus recruiting. And what they quickly realized was that their hiring managers were doing it anyway. They were using individuals to get support on these projects. In fact, those who weren't already using individuals valued it. They wanted the extra set of hands. They all have these projects that aren't the highest and best use of their time that they would be more than happy to give to a college student. Again, we're not talking about 10 weeks of work. We're not talking about a summer-long experience, and again, not meant to replace that, but these individual projects where a hiring manager can get some support if he or she's too busy, but also provide that opportunity to engage that college student. Again, back to my metaphor before, back to the date. Give the college student an opportunity to work on a project for you. Let them learn about your company. Let them learn about the role. Let them explore a company they may not have thought of, or let you get to know a student at a school you may not be recruiting at.
And that's probably never been the case, more so than now, too, because so many of these hiring managers had to then deal with a workforce shortage this summer because they're canceled or scaled back their internship program.
No, and that's a really insightful point. And building upon it, again, back to my example before with the financial services organization, hiring managers have gotten comfortable with remote work. They get it, and they know that college students can help them on discrete projects. I mean, the best run summer internship programs this year are those that have taken that project-based approach to it, that are having students working on discrete projects throughout the summer. Again, not one or two, but a number of them summer long, where there's defined beginnings and defined ends because the students saw value from it. They had actual deliverables and they got to learn about the organization, but the hiring managers saw value in it too. Why does that need to stop just because the students are going back to school? This whole approach sort of provides the managers with that support year round, but it also supports the campus recruiting year round. It's no longer limited to just certain career fairs or certain time of year. You can actually start to build and nurture relationships with prospective students. The next question that comes up a lot is, again, the administrative burdens. I can really only talk to Parker Dewey's approach on this, but in short, we built the model to make it easy. So there are certainly companies and organizations that are doing micro internships themselves, which is great. Part of the challenge is you still need to get students to engage. So how do you actually engage the student that wasn't already thinking about applying for your program? But the other aspect is the administrative burden. And this is where, again, we've been able to come in, that we're actually structured as a consulting firm, which means that the students, when they're completing these projects, are actually employees or contractors of Parker Dewey, which means there's no 1099, there's no W-2. Makes it really, really easy to engage them on project-based work. And as a mission-driven organization, there's no like catches. There's no surprise fees. If you get to know Jeff, the micro intern, and you decided someone that you want to recruit and ultimately hire, great. There's no conversion fee or temp to perm. We're trying to make it really, really, really easy for everyone. Again, it's a mission-driven organization. Even things like having the templates for hiring managers in marketing, sales, HR, making it really easy for them to post the projects and engage with college students from around the country. Again, it's very, very important because you have to make sure the view's worth the climb. And that's one of the big things that we've seen really prove out over the past 5 years.
I'll also address that piece of that all the opportunities are paid, because yes, students could do things unpaid. That's not what they're wanting, because whoever wants to work for free. And that really doesn't create this egalitarian space for students who can't afford to work without being paid to engage with this. And so for companies on the call, you're missing out on a potentially very large workforce by only looking at those opportunities or those students that can afford to do this unpaid.
Yeah, no, and that's important. I mean, we've talked a lot about that in the past, the challenge with challenges and other unpaid internship programs and how they actually hinder diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I'm really happy you brought that up, Kristen. What we also hear a lot of is, again, this discussion of we hire someone and then realize they don't fit. or they leave in 6 months, or the communication skills aren't what we expected, or they come into an interview, they look great on paper, but we've all been in those interviews where within the first minute or two, we realize it's probably not the right fit, but we're sort of in the interview together for the next 30 minutes. What we found is the best way to know if someone has the skills is to actually see them do the work. And being able to put that at the front of the recruiting process is pretty powerful. And it's one of the reasons that we've seen this experiential recruiting approach be more cost effective. Again, even in the pre-COVID environment, we've seen anywhere from 40 to 80% cost savings because companies can spend their time more effectively, spend less time going into an interview with someone who's not the right fit, less time doing phone screens, less time flipping through resume books, or traveling all over hosting events only to find out that you're not getting enough applicants. So we're seeing a lot of those things as well. So how can companies get started? Again, look, as we talked about, there were a lot of best practices that have emerged over the summer with companies as they've figured out how to take their summer internship programs remote. But we've seen a lot of things even pre-COVID. So over the past 5 years, we've seen a number of best practices. First of all, busy employees. As I alluded to before, every one of us on the call has projects on our plate that we don't have enough hours for, or that we're dreading doing because they're not the highest and best use of our time. Give them to a college student. College students are excited to help, not just because they're getting paid. That's actually, again, from the survey results, the least important part to them, even though it's important and valuable. They're more excited to help because it lets them demonstrate skills and explore career paths and build their network. So focus on those employees who are constantly coming to you asking, are you filling, can we add to our team? Can our interns stay longer? How come it's taking so long to fill this open position? Again, employees are busy. Being able to provide this as an additional resource makes the employees happy, makes the teammates happy because they're able to get that support from projects. In fact, with, I don't know, I've seen stats ranging anywhere from 50 to 80% plus of professionals using freelancers already. They're already doing this. They're already working with individuals. Why not leverage it to support your campus recruiting efforts, especially this fall? Which gets to, again, the second point, the teams that are hiring. Again, we all have teams that have open positions that we're not filling, or positions we're not filling fast enough or haven't gotten approved yet, but we're waiting to, but those teams need help. Offering them the opportunity to engage a micro intern is a pretty powerful way to get that support. While they're looking to fill that team, getting the immediate support from a highly motivated college student is incredibly valuable to that busy professional. And by the way, it may lead to the right hire. You may find the right person to fill the role. As I alluded to before, again, anywhere from 50 to 80% plus are engaging freelancers. A lot of times the companies don't even realize it, which is a whole different can of worms. But there's a great opportunity as well to identify those individuals who are using freelancers and have them continue to use freelancers, but by using college students, it can really support the recruiting efforts of companies. Another thing that's been really, really interesting to see is the ERGs. Again, especially right now with such a focus on ensuring equitable opportunity. We have seen a ton of companies leveraging their ERGs to provide these project-based opportunities to college students with similar backgrounds. So not only is it a way for them to get some support, but they also like the opportunity of giving the hand up to someone from a similar background to them. And there's some really, really neat opportunities there. We're seeing something with a very large company right now that engaged its Black Leaders in Technology ERG group to engage college students at schools that the company has not historically recruited at. And that's one of the ways that they're, again, building those relationships and bringing those students in, while again, showing the organization's commitment to driving real diversity, equity, and inclusion, as opposed to it just being a logo or a banner. Another thing we're seeing a lot of is the university alumni and fans. So I went to Indiana. I am a huge Indiana fan and always happy to support my alma mater. One of the things we're seeing a lot, and this is actually a good segue to the next slide, is we're seeing a lot of university alumni who are excited to provide these opportunities to current students. So very similar to the ERGs, if I, as an Indiana alum working at a large company, am being told that I can engage a current student to help me on a project, I would do that so quickly, because not only am I getting all of these other benefits of the support on the project, but it's a great way to support my alma mater. So Kristen, how can the universities help?
Well, and I think before addressing that specific question, one thing that really stands out to me, again, thinking about the companies, but also thinking about the student's perspective, and is this the flexibility element of it, in that, if you are a company that has staffing or, needs, but you're not really sure because it is such a dynamic time from, the economic standpoint of whether or not you're going to need somebody long-term, short-term, or what have you. This is a really good solution for you to get some short-term project piece done. But similarly, from the student's perspective, I had a call with a school yesterday where the question was essentially, yeah, but we don't want them to just do all these short-term experiences. We want them to go on to get full-time opportunities. And I said, absolutely. We don't want students to be perpetual giggers. That's not the goal here. We want them to leverage this experience to go on and eventually leave the micro-internship world and go on to something longer term, whether it be an internship, full-time job, or whatever they want to do. And so I think that flexibility is really important for everybody's life right now, whether you're a student, a business, or anyone. We just need some more options to be able to have everybody help each other out to get work done. And in this case, it's very mutually beneficial. And so then looking now at the universities, lots of schools are on this call trying to figure out how can I best support my students. And I think the first piece is just recognizing that traditional methods are not what students want. And I know that inherently we all know this. However, we're creatures of habit. And again, having worked at universities, worked at 4 different colleges, in the past, it's very easy to pick up that same PowerPoint presentation, that same curriculum, and redo it all over again. Come fall term, it's I've already been there, done that, and it's great. Same career fair, you get the same plan together, and so on. But we're not in that stage anymore. And if we want to be effective, it's not necessarily just slapping the word virtual in front of all of the things that we used to do before, whether it be advising or career fairs, info sessions, and all of our other programming, and thinking that just putting virtual in front of it, it's going to be what students need and or want. That's not necessarily going to be the case. But similarly, this may not give the employee. Please go ahead.
And Kristen, to your point, again, back to the comment before about the silver lining, this isn't what they wanted pre-COVID either. That we had the data showing that students didn't want the career fairs. They didn't want those, wasn't adding as much value. I think where this year's interesting is that on top of everything else we're going through. Does this become a way to ask questions of some of those traditional processes for universities and companies alike?
And I know that everybody on this call is already asking themselves that question. So, and just thinking through, all of your different constituents. So yeah, it's not what your students want. It's also not what your employers necessarily want, because they want results. We're all looking at decreased budgets. If we're a college, if we're a company, everybody is having to do more with less right now. And so we got to find something that's the most effective way. And what I found, though, that's particularly interesting is actually conversations that we've had with some of the colleagues that interface with companies, and just in general with conversations with companies. Those employers are looking for you career services, you universities, you who interface with students. They're looking for you to figure out and tell them how to best provide opportunities to connect with your students, because you're sitting at that apex of the Venn diagram, if you will, of being able to connect students and employers. You're at that strategically important place, always have been, but now more so than ever, they want to figure out, what are you going to provide that's going to allow them to connect with students? And yes, you're going to be doing a virtual career fair. I know every single one of you is probably doing something and more of that this fall. But is that going to do it for these students? And is that going to necessarily give everybody that experience that they want? And I think the data really shows that that's not the case. And so being able to suggest to employers that there's other options. They may not have heard about these other micro opportunities, these ways to engage with students, that it's so easy for them to engage with students. If they don't already have an infrastructure to do some sort of paid short-term project, they could run it through us, they could do it elsewhere, but they can engage students short-term. They can provide support for their busy hiring managers. They can work with your students at any time, not just wait till the next summer or the next fall term or whatever. They can do it at any time because your students are hungry for opportunities,
Well,
and they're bored and they're scared.
yeah, and it's again interesting that you bring up the employer partners. What we're seeing a lot of also that's been interesting is a lot of universities are also finding opportunities to engage those non-partners, those companies that haven't historically recruited at their school. So while a university may have a great relationship with company ABC and is already having these conversations and bringing them in and showing that innovation, as Kristen alluded to, what we're also seeing a lot of is schools engaging the employers that haven't yet recruited on campus. And again, this is especially true right now because companies pre-COVID were getting increasingly frustrated competing for the same handful of students at the same handful of schools. And with such a big focus on expanding the talent pool, I don't care how many applicants you get, every company we talk to talks about wanting to expand the talent pool, whether it's because they're sick of competing for the same handful of students or whether it's tied to their mission and increasing access and ensuring equitable access or driving more diversity, not just sort of racial or ethnic diversity, but diversity of thought, diversity from different majors, diversity across every background. They're looking to engage students from different backgrounds. So for schools, it's a great opportunity to support those employers as well, whether they're your current partners or ones you haven't been able to bring over yet. So, I mean, why does this work, Kristen?
Well, I think it's one of those rare times in life where everybody wins. The hiring managers, they value the fact that they get to engage with all these students that, as Jeffrey just mentioned, run across the full spectrum of university type and types, majors, and also all across the country, et cetera. And of course, they get immediate support from highly motivated students. A question I get from schools all the time is, yeah, but what if students don't do a very good job? I mean, Jeffrey, you've been doing this for 5 years. What's been your experience seeing students work and hearing from the companies?
Yeah, I mean, it's north of 98% success rate on projects. I mean, it's pretty insane because while an individual hiring manager, so someone on your marketing team or sales team saying, I'm busy, I need the extra set of hands. Great, they're getting the work done and they're happy. But for the college student, it's more than just completing that project. It's about proving themselves. It's about the career exploration, which again, 80 whatever percent talked about is vital to them, especially right now. It's getting their foot in the door. It's building their network. It's building their resume. It's learning about different roles. What that means is they're just excited to exceed expectations. They're excited to prove themselves. They're excited to show off, if you will, and do a great job. And that becomes a great way for the university recruiters to not just build the relationships with students, but also to assess them and see if they have the right skills to succeed. And by the way, some students may do a micro internship and say, do you know what? Not the right company for me. I'm not going to apply to a summer internship. So even though they do a great job, they may realize it's not the right fit. Well, as a university recruiter, better you figure that out before spending all the time, money, effort on the interviews and the flights and the super days. And even worse, better figure it out before bringing them on and having them leave a month in because it's not the right fit. So we're seeing a ton of these benefits, again, of this exploration. And to Kristen's point, the hiring managers like the value. The other thing we're seeing a lot, again, one of the reasons it's a win-win, and we got a question about the career services departments feeling so constrained, how in a lot of cases budgets were cut, and how can the career services departments continue to support the students especially those whose budgets have been cut. And that's one of the reasons why, since day one, sort of the Parker Dewey platform has been free. We're not charging schools. We're not asking schools to write checks. We're giving them this resource and giving them the best practices. And Kristen spends, gosh, what, 100%, maybe 120% of your time working with the schools to build programs for them to engage the employer partners that don't require an additional investment by the school, whether it's a financial investment or a time investment. And that's really, really important. Again, how do you drive that equitable access? So again, that's another reason it works. And at the end of the day, look, the university recruiters value the outcomes. So while the students and the individual professional see value, whether it's the professional with, I got some work done that wasn't the best use of my time anyway, or a student who got the experience in the career exploration and the opportunity to build a resume and build a network and all of these other wonderful things, the university recruiting teams also see the value. They realize it's a way to engage students who weren't planning on applying to their company, or getting to know students at schools they haven't historically recruited at, or building relationships with students who they think could be great fits with their organization, and building those relationships very, very authentically. And the outcome of this is better hiring outcomes, whether it's measured by diversity, whether it's measured by retention, whether it's measured by conversion or cost or any of these other things. We're seeing better outcomes over and over. And that's one of the reasons I guess I'm just so proud of this slide. That it works because we see this real sustainable impact. For companies that are using this tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as one of the companies said, it's not charity. So even though diversity, equity, and inclusion is core to the mission and core to the value of that company, and they certainly make a number of philanthropic investments around it, in his words, it's not charity. The student was amazing and helped him get the work done and made his life easier. And what it also did was it helped him change his perspective, that this was an individual that was used to recruiting from certain schools and majors and backgrounds, and decided to give a micro internship to a student from a different background. And what he realized was how much this student brought to the table, and realized that something was missing from their current process. And now it's an organization that's continuing to use this to help power their campus recruiting. We're seeing other companies where students weren't applying because they never heard of the brand. And all of a sudden, it's a great way to engage students if they don't have the consumer brand. Or on the other side of it, for companies with really strong consumer brands to overcome those brand biases. For the student who thinks financial services is a bunch of white males walking around in suits, sort of sitting around, this helps them understand that financial services firms have a ton of tech and a ton of diversity and a ton of, and all of these different roles, backgrounds, people. Here's a way to explore. Or to realize a company that makes soda has opportunities in strategy and opportunities outside of, again, what the consumer-facing brand is. And that's part of, again, why we think, and why, to Kristen's point, it's a win for everyone. Look, we're all in this situation together. And doesn't look like the current pandemic is ending anytime soon. But at the end of the day, everyone is on the same page in that college students are graduating and they want to get great jobs. Not great meaning the highest paying or most prestigious brand, great meaning it's the right job for them and the right fit and a role from which they can launch their career. The students want that. The employers want it too. They want to make the right hires, not right defined as the highest GPA from the most academically selective school, but right meaning the students with the skills, the grit, with the desire to sort of be a great employee and continue to grow at their organization and not job hop after 6 months. And the universities obviously want that too. I mean, post-secondary education is under attack and will continue to be. What we're trying to do is continue to help everyone understand why post-secondary education is so important. And for the colleges and universities, this is a great way to do that. Whether it's at the very theoretical level of let's help the students understand why majors that don't sound like job titles sort of lead to great jobs, or whether it's at the very tactical level. Let's engage companies that haven't yet been to our campus or haven't recruited here in years, or let's deepen our relationships with those companies who have. Or let's give opportunities for companies to engage students who they may be missing. It's a great partnership we have with University Innovation Alliance. It's a network of 11 large state institutions where a lot of these career services departments talk about the fact that they have hundreds of employers or thousands of employers coming to campus, but they're all recruiting the same 20 or 30% of the students. And that's not good for anyone. So again, part of what we're seeing is this experiential recruiting overcomes those barriers and those burdens. Kristen, anything I missed?
Well, I think there was a great question that came up around just the supervision element and the ask that we're making of companies to identify a hiring manager who, has a project, yes, but they also have to have adequate supervision of the student. And my take on that is, just like the student is highly motivated to succeed and do well with this project, that hiring manager too is really, really invested in getting that project done as well. It's his or her project. And so I think that inherent motivation helps to drive that extra level of supervision. Plus, it's not that big of an ask. These projects are generally completed in a week, maybe two, maybe a bit longer, depending on what it is. But it's not something that you're asking somebody to supervise a student for 8, 10, whatever weeks.
Yeah, and to build upon that, I mean, these micro internships are not something we've jury-rigged together in response to COVID. This is not something new. This is not something reactionary. We pioneered this 5 years ago. And what that means is, over the past 5 years, we've developed a library of projects that we know are perfect for college students, are ones that don't require a lot of supervision, are ones college students can execute flawlessly independently, without the hand-holding of a manager. And in fact, for a lot of managers, they like the fact that the students bring something different to the table, that they're not coming in with the preconceived biases of having done it a certain way over the past 5 or 10 years, that students can take unique or different approaches to it and lend a different voice and a different perspective. So feedback from the hiring managers has been pretty incredible. And again, that was one of the goals here, is to come up with a way that hiring managers could see value without adding to their cost. If the view's not worth the climb, they're not going to do it. And again, with so many examples of completed micro internships, we sort of have it down to a science. So obviously, for folks who either ask that question or have other questions around it, happy to share specific examples. And we've done things with organizations to make it really easy for them to launch within their own companies, whether it's portals with marketing specific projects or sales specific projects, or engaging in all these different ways, because we've sort of seen it all.
And I think also, just as we move on from this, is, just to kind of close out our conversation today, happy to share the full report that we wrote with all the students' results from the survey. Also happy to share with you a recording in case it'd be helpful for you to pass this dialogue along to other folks on your team. But also happy to share with you some infographics and other resources to kind of illustrate some of the points that we talked about and things that we've seen, that schools, you could share that with some of your employer partners within your network, and then again, companies who are joining us today can circulate amongst your team just to help share more about what this concept is all about.
Yeah, and I know we're hitting the top of the hour, so thank you again for spending the time. Hopefully this was a bit interesting and useful. I know when we were going through the survey results, we were all sort of blown away by what the data was telling us. Again, my biggest takeaway for the colleges and for the employers who are on the call is this year's uncharted territory. This year is going to be different. I don't think anyone knows exactly how things are going to shake out, but the students have told us. The students have said what they're looking for. The students have told us how they want to be engaged. And what's great is it's something that's highly actionable by everyone here on the call, and something that has proven to be effective. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us. As Kristen mentioned, we'll get the full survey out to everyone so you can take a look at the data. And if you have other questions, feedback, ideas, whatever, please don't be bashful and let us know.
Thank
With
you all
that,
again.
yeah, with that, this concludes the webinar. Thanks so much.